Well, good to have everybody here today. We excited when we ever get together because it's always a chance to proclaim the word of the Lord, as well as have an opportunity to just talk about what DLI is doing, and then get the benefit of guests that are bringing some great things to us. So we do thank God, and we're excited about being with us today. But before I get started. I did want to bring one scripture to you as I can find it here. And really, what I was dealing with is the whole idea of um, of of continue to push. And some of you have been around for a little while. We used to say this expression: "Pray until something happens," and that's been around us. But there was actually a biblical verse that goes on with it. And I'm reading this out of Hosea 10 and 12. And it says, and I said, plant good seed in righteousness, and ye will harvest a crop of love. Plow up the hard ground of your hearts, for now it is time to seek the Lord, that he may come and shower righteousness upon you. In other words, just continue to plow, continue to seek the Lord until something happens, until he showers righteousness upon you. And we do have to be persistent, especially in the day that we live in right now. We're living a day that it just looks like everything is going contrary to the word of God. But we have to be consistent. Those of us that are born again believers, that are Christians, it's so very important for us to be consistent, consistently in your prayer closet, seeking the Lord, standing for righteousness, not wavering, even those in the pulpit, not wavering our values, not wavering based on the culture, but literally living and preaching that which the word says. So we're going to continue to pray. In some cases, preach until something happens, because we're not going to stop, and we're going to, for it's now time to seek the Lord, and he may come and shower righteousness upon you. Until the Lord breaks out, we're just going to continue to pray. And I know we definitely need that now. And bringing that up, before I turn it over to Tori, I just want to remind you what you're going to talk about at the end of the broadcast is something very, very, very exciting. And that is that we literally are just a little over 2 weeks before our regional conference that we have every year. And this year is going to be in the Atlanta area. It's going to be in Norcross, Georgia at the Crown Plaza Hotel. And this is October 24th through the 26th. And you probably, if you guys are on, you probably seen the advertisement about it. But I'm telling you, you do not want to miss it. If you are a believer, if you're a Christian, and then it's particularly if you care what's going on in the Black community, the Black family, all these areas, you have to be here. But I mean, no matter what the race, quite frankly, we're going to talk values, we're going to talk purpose, we're going to talk biblical foundation, we're going to talk about biblical worldview, and how it laps over into the culture, from training pastors to those that are in the pews in the flock. We need to understand what to believe, especially at a time that we're in, because the culture is trying to pull us apart, try to go to one way or another. But we have to stand on the Bible. We have to stand on scriptures without any excuse and without any type of compromise. The scriptures is what we stand on. You hear me pressing down. I have a Bible right here. I know. So most of you, your Bible's on your phone, and whatever it is that you're using, you want to keep it in your heart, and we have to continue to press through. So this conference is bringing together hundreds of Christians from all over the nation that are going to stand firm. We're going to be talking about, as tonight, talking about protecting the unborn in the womb. We stand for that. We're not compromising it. We stand for protecting the unborn in the womb. We're going to talk about Black families, how to sustain Black families, and the attacks that are on family in general, and certainly manifest in the Black families' economic development, about how to economically be strong as a people group. And then, of course, justice, criminal justice, justice issues. And we're going to talk about all this, basically how to bring the kingdom to the culture. So we just want to tell you that's going to be exciting. Register. We'll tell you at the end about registering, or if you want to jump on right now, is conference.dlinstitute.org. Conference.dlinstitute.org. And you can jump right on and register, but don't miss this. It's going to be a powerful time, and we're really looking forward to it. All right, well, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tori as he introduces today's Leaders Live. Very, very excited about it today because we have a friend of the ministry that's been a friend for years, actually. He's a very good friend of Bishop D. Nelson. He was a very good friend to the ministry over the years. And so it's great to have him on board on Leaders Live today. So, Tori, I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. And seriously, thank you all so much for taking time out of your schedule. Your time is valuable to us at the Douglass Leadership Institute, and we really do appreciate you joining us for our monthly Leaders Live discussion. We do our best to gather guests from across the nation that are leaders in the issues that the Douglass Leadership Institute stands for. As a reminder, this call is not intended for the press. That's just something we just want folks to know. It's more for leader development and enrichment. I want to encourage you all to engage in the conversation with the chat. We do actively monitor that. We're hoping to make a little bit of time for Q&A, so we will be passing along, hints along to our host. Today's Leaders Live call is going to be hosted by Jeremy Hunt, who you have probably seen in a number of contexts, including, I think he was just on Fox News just a couple of days ago, a voice on a number of issues, and he'll be interviewing Benjamin Watson, who, as a Baltimorean, we were glad to have him for the little time he was with us, but we got Lamar Jackson, so we're all right, Ben. So, so no, it's going to be a great discussion. I really do encourage you all to engage in the conversation. We're going to open up in a word of prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Jeremy Hunt. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your grace and your mercy, for the opportunity we have to be good stewards with the resources that you've blessed us with. Thank you so much for leaders that you've given us, leaders that have been able to lead the charge on key issues such as the issue of life. And we are so grateful for leaders like Jeremy and Benjamin and Bishop Hunt and many, many others who not only have been using their platforms to advance a culture for Christ, but also continue to do so with other opportunities and venues that you give us. Bless this call, bless the conversation, bless the discussion, and help it to be enriching to us all. We ask all these things in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Jeremy, all yours.
Awesome. Well, it's such an honor to be with all of you. I've been on many Leaders Live. It's cool to finally be here and host one, and especially with just a great man, Benjamin Watson, who's a dear friend of mine. And I want to, I'm going to start with just I'm just going to read his bio so you guys can kind of see all the things he's doing right now. And then we're going to have a conversation, just really kind of back and forth talking about the fight for life and Benjamin's leadership and the fight for life. And then at the end, if we have some extra time, we can take some questions. If we have a little bit of extra time. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going. So Benjamin Watson is a former NFL tight end, as well as an author, a speaker, and an advocate, a Bart Starr Award winner, two-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, and Super Bowl champion during his 16 seasons in the National Football League. He's now a college football studio analyst with the SEC Network. Matter of fact, my wife and I, we just saw you the other day on there, Benjamin. We were watching football, which is very cool. And I didn't text you. I was tempted to text you, but I see you, but that was too much. But anyway, he's also vice president of strategic relations with Human Coalition and director of football for Pro Athletes Outreach. Along with his wife, Kirsten, he's the founder of the Watson 7 Foundation, which is a nonprofit focused on strengthening families. And they are pursuing their mission of justice, kindness, and faith. The Watsons now live in Georgia with their 7 children. Welcome, Benjamin.
Hey, good to see everybody. Thanks for having me. And what's crazy is we were just talking about this, but we probably could have done this side by side because you live like 4 miles from me, and we still haven't seen each other. But it's a joy to join everybody tonight. Thank you.
Yes, and I totally would have invited myself to your house too, is what I
You
would
should
have done.
have.
But no, it's an honor to have you here. But I want to start with just your upbringing growing up. I think we both have similar upbringings with both of our dads being pastors and having that foundation. Would love to hear just kind of how Benjamin got his start.
Yeah, well, I was sitting here looking at you and your dad and reminding me of me and my father. My dad's a pastor in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I grew up going to church every day of the week, as we used to, twice on Sunday. And I'm the oldest of six kids, grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, actually, before moving to South Carolina in high school. And I love sports growing up. My father and mother met at University of Maryland in the 70s. He was playing football there. They got married, and 2 years later, they had me in 1980. And I always wanted to be like my dad and play football. So I remember being a kid, following my dad around. He would do chapels for high school football teams or college or pro football teams, and I'd just be tagging along. Always knew I wanted to be involved in football, and so as time went on, had the opportunity to play in high school and move on, obviously, to college. Went to Duke University at first, and then transferred to the University of Georgia after my freshman year. But my parents are still together. They've been married for what's 45. Yeah, I'm about to turn 45 years now,
Wow.
and gave us not a perfect upbringing, because we're all flawed humans, as I'm learning with my kids, but an upbringing that really taught us in the admonition of the Lord. What I can say about my parents for all of us is that they set good examples. They made sure we knew who Jesus was, and they made sure we understood that we had to make a decision ourselves, and kind of led us in that direction. So very, very grateful for my upbringing and my childhood.
Absolutely. Totally agree. We are both very blessed to have grown up in Christian homes that taught us the truth at a young age. And so I'm curious to hear just kind of how you went from, going from being an NFL star to a pro-life advocate is not the most kind of intuitive path. How did that happen for you? And kind of what was your story there?
Man, if you would have told me right now, I'll be talking to you guys about the issue of life, or speaking around the country about the issue of life, that wasn't ever really in the plans. And it's crazy how God uses different people at different times. For this moment in time, I've had an opportunity to speak about this issue, advocate for this issue, work obviously professionally in this realm. But really, if I can point back to maybe around 2018 or so, Tori, you'll like this, but I was playing for Baltimore for the Ravens in 2016 and 17. And we went to this event. It was put on by Focus on the Family and also the ERA LLC. And they had an opportunity to purchase ultrasound units for pregnancy resource centers. Flashback to 2009, we had our first child, Grace. And when we left from the 3D 4D ultrasound, my wife said, you know what? One day I'd love to offer this service for other women. 9 years later, we're sitting there in Baltimore, Maryland, and this opportunity comes up, and we jumped on it. And so we started purchasing ultrasound units through a couple of organizations, and have placed about 5 of them around the country, really in places that mean something to us. So New Orleans, Louisiana, where we played there. Baltimore, we placed one. Rock Hill, South Carolina, one here in Georgia in Noonan, actually, we placed an ultrasound there. And when you do that in the NFL, I guess it's news. I don't know why, but it becomes news. And so immediately people start asking questions about that. Then I get an opportunity to speak at the March for Life. I had no idea what the March for Life was. I thought there would be like 5 people there. There turned out to be hundreds of thousands of people there. And so just incrementally, I think God just opened doors, really for this to be something that we spoke about. And growing up, back in the 80s, 90s, it wasn't really pro-life in our home. We didn't talk about it that way. For us growing up, and for me as a believer, it's really the idea that people have an inherent dignity, and that the image of God is stamped on the human being from conception into the grave. And that from womb to tomb, we advocate and care for people. That's what I learned growing up, that people had value in that way. And so for me, it wasn't a, focused on just the preborn child, although the preborn child was important. For me, it's kind of the totality of the human experience and advocating for people to reach their full potential and their God-given flourishing. And so, you know, this fit right into so many other justice issues. And it was interesting because I did an article back then, and I mentioned something about the Black community and the abortion numbers, and just how race in America, how injustices in America, you know, funnel into the issue of abortion. That is kind of a cycle. It's not just that Black people are targeted. Yes, that's part of it, but also because of the systemic injustices that have happened over time, make one people group more vulnerable to this act. And I said something about that, and then that really kind of hit the news because I was an active player talking about it. And so over the last few years, I've been fortunate even to meet people like Reverend Nelson, like Dean. And you know, Dean meant a lot to me because I got to see him. You know, I'm sorry. He showed me like what it meant to be somebody who people respected on both sides of the aisle, and somebody who like lived what he preached, and somebody who was able to move in so many different spheres, whether it be business or whether it be politics or whether it be in the church, whether it be in Black communities, whether it be in non-Black communities, Christian, non-Christian, just somebody who was respected as a statesman. And I saw that and I said, man, you know, that's I want to be like that in my own way, but I want to be like that. And so the Lord allowed me to spend, you know, a few years with him, especially at Human Coalition. I didn't see him a lot in person. We see each other on calls a lot of times, but he had a tremendous influence on my life, especially as somebody who's navigating, you know, issues of life, abortion, race, those sorts of things, and faith, and where they all come together.
Yeah. I think I'm one of many folks, even on this call and far beyond, just who incredibly impacted by Bishop Dean's legacy and what he's meant to us all. So I appreciate you sharing that too. And I want to go back to one thing you talked about a little bit about going to the ultrasound. You said that that was kind of your entryway in. So you started providing ultrasound to different communities. I think that's a really special way to show, you know, it is hard for even the most pro-abortion person to look at an ultrasound and say that's not a life, you know. And you've publicly shared a little bit about when you first saw your daughter's 4D ultrasound, and I wanted you to, if you don't mind, just drilling into that story a little bit more. I think it's really neat, and about why you decided to focus on that with a lot of your advocacy.
Yeah, I remember. So our first child was 2009. We've been married. We got married in 2005. Waited a couple of years, and now I like to say we went straight 2-minute drill. We had 4 kids in 4.5 years, like back to back to back to back, starting in 2009. And I remember sitting in that room for the 3D 4D ultrasound. Kirsten was about 34 weeks or so. And if you've seen one of these ultrasounds before, it's kind of claymation looking, but you can tell what the child looks like. Like you can see your nose on them or your ears, whatever it is. And I'm standing there looking at this screen, and Grace, our daughter, yawned. Like she yawned. And then I caught the yawn looking at the screen from her yawning in utero. And so again, crazy. So we leave that place, and Kirsten says that. And then fast forward to the opportunity to partner with organizations and just understanding and being in pregnancy resource centers and other types of clinics, that the ultrasound a lot of times for both the father and the mother changes their mind. Because like you said, Jeremy, like, you know, you can see that this is life. Like it's not a clump of cells, like it's not any lesser type of life. It's just in a different stage of development. We're all developing throughout our life. I can't leave my 1 or 2-year-old by themselves because they'll die too. So, you know, it's a stage of development, and seeing that and hearing that from these, you know, pregnancy resource centers let me know that, man, there's so many different ways for us to advocate, and we all are equipped in different ways. For some people, we're going to convince people when it comes to life through our oratory skills. We're going to talk about this issue. For some people, we're going to do legislation. For some people, you're going to preach from the pulpit. For some people, you're going to use, your businesses in order to create spaces for women, or you're going to encourage them with things like paid leave or whatever it is. For other people, you're going to work in pregnancy resource centers. And it really was a unique opportunity for us, and that keeps paying dividends down the line. We don't know how many women have come to, use some of these ultrasound units, but we know that at a specific time, that was what God was pushing us into. And as we've heard stories from those different clinics, we've really been encouraged that the Lord is using this technology to save lives.
Amazing. I love it. And now, by the way, with Grace, is that the same child that you had the controversial touchdown celebration? Is that the same one, or is that?
Yes, that was the same
Okay.
one. Yeah, it was controversial because in 2009, it was like the no fun league. You couldn't do anything. And so we're playing a game in Seattle. We had been gone for 2 weeks on the West Coast playing, and Kirsten was in Boston. I was with the Patriots at the time. And I put the ball under my shirt and rub it and look at the camera after I scored a touchdown. And then the NFL, the No Fun League, sent me a fine for $10,000 for using the ball as a prop. Fast forward to 2018, we're pregnant with twins. Well, she's pregnant with twins. I ain't pregnant. She's pregnant with twins. And I'm playing for the Saints, score a touchdown. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I'm going to get in the end zone, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. Put the ball under my shirt, rub it, and I hold up 5 for the 5 kids we had, and then 1, 2 for the twins. No fine. Like, it was a different league. Everybody was happy, all that type of stuff. So, yeah, Grace was the controversial one.
I love that story. I mean, just really, championing life and celebrating life, even in the no fun league,
Yeah.
and it still is that in many ways. But anyway, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about your current work with Human Coalition. I just, the work that you all do with women is it's amazing, and I think one of the kind of common misconceptions, one of the kind of tropes you hear from, especially from people, frankly, on the left, is, well, pro-life people don't care about the baby after they're born, and what happened, after that they aren't working with mothers in crisis pregnancies, and you kind of hear these kind of things. And I know organizations like Human Coalition and others are pouring in vast resources to help women from throughout their pregnancy and after they eventually, if they they go through with their pregnancy, even afterwards. And so I want to hear a little bit about what you're currently doing and kind of what that mission is like.
Yeah, so currently I am a VP of Strategic Relationships. Basically, that means I connect with supporters, try to gain new supporters, create partnerships with organizations and individuals that will support us, kind of telling the story of Human Coalition. When I retired in 2020, we're living in Boston, then COVID hit, so we're all in the house together in 2020. And after that, in 2021, I wanted to figure out, I want to explore some of the options. What are some things that mean something to me? And I'd been on Human Coalition's board for a while. And a guy named DJ Jordan, who some of you may know, DJ Jordan, powerful brother. It's amazing how God places people in your life at just the right time, because I was confused. I'm still confused sometimes, but I was confused. And he helped me kind of navigate the things that I should pour my time into. And he mentioned Human Coalition. And so I reached out to Jeff Bradford, the president. At the same time, they were looking for someone kind of like me to fill that role. And we tested it out. And I've been with them for the last 3 years. And what drew me to Human Coalition, Jeremy, was exactly what you just said. This was an organization that was not just telling women not to abort, but it was saying, we're going to walk with you as long as it takes in order to help you flourish. And so what we do is we target the planning to abort women. And so there's kind of 2 different groups here. There's the group that just needs a little bit of help. And many times they go to pregnancy resource centers that they want to carry their child. And then there are those who are determined to abort their child, that they are looking for opportunities to do so. And that's the client that Human Coalition tries to serve. We try to serve those who are going that direction. And then through our nurses and telecare, where people call into our call center, then connecting them to pregnancy resource centers in their area, connecting them to social services if they need social services, whether that be WIC or help with housing or food, whatever it may be. We try to stem the tide in that way. And so I'm still excited about what HUCO is doing, because we are combating the narrative that you said. There's a narrative that pro-lifers only care about kids in utero. And as you mentioned, there are organizations, there are people who are doing the exact opposite that are caring. As a matter of fact, I push back on that a lot of times and say, well, the leader in abortions, they're not walking with women. They're not connecting, they're not connecting women to services. That they're not giving them counseling. They're not giving them whatever they need in order to make birth tenable and raising and parenting tenable. They are doing the exact opposite. They are leaving women alone. And so, some of the women we see decide to abort. It's not 100%. But the great thing is that the staff that we have, there are times when a woman has decided to abort and she gets pregnant again and comes back because of the way she was treated by the staff at Human Coalition.
Wow.
And so it's just a testimony, man. And I've just learned so much about the issue and about the importance of this issue. This is something that we can't stand alongside and put our head in the sand. It's very real. I mean, here in Georgia, I think now we're back to 22 weeks because of an injunction by a judge. So it's going to be this teeter-totter, type of battle right now and over the next several years.
Absolutely. And on that end, so I mean, you're doing this work with Human Coalition while you're still, I mean, every weekend you're on SEC Network, calling games. You're very, you're very public, even in culture, even in environments that are obviously not, pro-life, or, would not even probably appreciate the stand that you've taken. How do you navigate that? I want to hear just kind of what it's like. You're not just a pro-life advocate, you're also still very relevant in culture, doing a lot of things. And it's risky. I mean, I can imagine that it is not popular, the stand that you take and the environments that you're in. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that, in Matthew, when Jesus talks about counting the cost of following him, and that, if you lose your life, you gain it. And that principle translates to our lives as believers and the things that we care about and things that we stand for. And so, yes, there's always a cost, a possible cost. For me, one of the things I loved about the NFL was that even in the league, I'd write something or say something or be on TV talking about, let's say, this issue, and there'll be one or two guys or a coach that will come over and say, man, I feel the same way that you do. Thanks for saying something.
Wow.
And what that let me know, and all of us know, is that many times people are just looking for someone to have the courage to speak out. They're just looking for someone to say something so that they can come behind them. And also, the thing I loved about the league was that you're in there with a bunch of guys. Some of them are heathens, some of them know the Lord, and everywhere in between, right? Everywhere in between. It's amazing because we love each other because we go through a lot of the same things together. Like, even if I don't agree with you, I love you. I can have a conversation with you. And because of that, you understand that, look, people want to see authenticity.
Yeah.
Even if they don't agree with you. One of the comments that I've gotten before, of course, I've been called a lot of names like we all have, it happens. But one of the comments that I really love is when people say, man, I don't really agree with you on life, but at least I believe you're being authentic. And at least I believe that you care about women and children. Even if I don't agree and I believe it should be a woman's choice, I respect you for that. And so that's what kind of keeps me going. In spaces where, yes, it may not be overtly Christian or overtly pro-life, but there's still space for people to be authentic. And there's space for having conversations. I've had conversations with my colleagues at SEC Network before about this issue when we're off air.
Right. That is very cool. And I think you've built a reputation for yourself as someone who is wants to win people. You're not interested in just winning an argument. You want to win people, and you seem to be just my impression of you, and just getting to know you just a little bit over the last time, a little bit of time, and just seeing you publicly. That's something that I see that as a kind of a hallmark of what you bring to the table, and the pro life fight, and I really respect that. I'm curious to hear, have there ever been a time where you have felt like the kind of the winsome kind of approach hasn't worked, and you've had to revert to other tactics? And how has that happened for you?
Yes, yes. I think that we are, um, to be smart and wise in how we engage. We're supposed to understand that our words are seasoned with salt, even though they aren't all the time. Mine, at least, aren't all the time, on social media for sure, responding to people.
Mhm.
And sometimes you check yourself and be like, man, is this a righteous anger or is this just pride because I feel insulted?
Mhm.
And so the goal, like you said, is always to win people. Of course, there comes times where you draw the line in the sand. The line is always drawn in the sand. But in my I was in the airport a little while ago, and I was actually might have been working on this book, The New Fight for Life, and I was doing some editing, and this woman comes up to me. She works for Delta. She asked what I was working on, and I was like, "Oh, here we go." Well, I'm working on a book about abortion, of all things. And so she was like, "Uh-oh." And so she was definitely on the pro-choice side, cool. But she listened to me. I listened to her, all the usual arguments that you hear. And I was able to disarm her in the way I engaged. And I wouldn't say we left from the conversation with her agreeing with me, but at least she respected my stance and understood that, okay, there's a difference between trying to control a woman and tell her what she can't do and trying to protect life and serve her at the same time. And
Yeah.
so that might not have been a different tactic, like we mentioned, but just circling back to the idea of being willing to engage the culture. I mean that's what we see. That's what we see in Scripture. That's what we see from Paul. When he walks in to the city and he looks around and sees the statues that they have and the gods that they have, and he's culturally relevant and understanding. He has his line drawn in the sand. He has his convictions, but he engages the culture with the whole purpose of leading that culture to the truth while not ignoring it where people are coming from, but understanding it. And even on this issue, this topic, I think that's something that we can all, strive to do while still being people of conviction as well as compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm reminded of a story of one of my favorite Bishop Dean stories is when he was doing the sidewalk chalk, writing a pro-life message on the sidewalk, and the cops come to arrest these pro-lifers, literally just with sidewalk chalk, writing pro-life messages. And you hear him on the video just yell, "This is ridiculous! This is they are doing anything." Or you hear this the right, as you said, this kind of righteous indignation
Mhm.
at the injustice. And I love it because Bishop Dean is he's known for just being so winsome in the way he talks to people, the way he engages and he listens,
Yeah.
so composed. But at the thought of this, ridiculous injustice, it's these young pro-lifers that were about to be arrested. You saw that come out at a time when it was very much warranted. And so I love that. I want to talk a little bit about how so we're in a post-Roe America. You've written a book about this, talking about this kind of what's next. And a lot of pro-life activists are in a lot of ways demoralized. I mean, by a lot of these referenda that have come out. I mean, we were kind of on this high after we got Roe overturned, and that was an exciting time. I certainly, as someone who grew up in the movement, I mean, I just never imagined in a million years that Roe would be overturned. We talked about it so much, and it was like bring revival to America, overturn Roe, and both of those things are just seem so far out of reach, and it's amazing that it happened. Um, but it was sad and very demoralizing to see now all these referenda from different states who are now enshrining pro-abortion policies into their state constitutions. And so I want to hear from you just about kind of what's next and how do we win hearts and minds? How do we make sure that overturning Roe wasn't just this kind of Pyrrhic victory, but actually has something that lasts.
Yeah, I think I was right there with you when Roe was overturned, kind of in disbelief. When they leaked it the first time, I was like, there's no way in the world that's gonna happen. And then it happened. I'm like, man, oh, you have little faith. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
it actually happened. But my I was a bit cautious because I knew that from my experience in the movement, which hadn't been extensive at that point, I knew that a lot of people weren't quite ready or didn't quite understand what that meant. We largely didn't understand that overturning Roe does not end abortion. We know that now. We weren't prepared for the new battle, which is a state by state battle.
Yeah.
Which is actually more difficult and harder, and you have to be even more vigilant, I would say, on a state level. And now when we're sitting here, I guess 2 years after Roe being overturned, the actual numbers of abortion are higher than they were before. And so what we've understood is that, overturning Roe needed to happen. It was an egregious decision in the first place. I mean, scholars on both sides of the aisle have said that Roe was not correctly decided in the first place. So it needed to be overturned. But we also realized that there's still work to be done. The driving factors, we talk about this in Human Coalition, the driving factors that bring women to make abortion decisions are still very, very apparent and present. Those factors, according to the women that we serve, have to do with relationships, obviously, with fathers, have to do with economics, have to do with education, employment, those sorts of things is what they list as driving factors. And those things haven't changed. 76%, we talk about this a lot, 76% of the women that we serve at Human Coalition say they would prefer to parent their child if their circumstances were different. And so for me, that stat, like that statement right there, is the driving force behind finding organizations, finding ways, finding legislation to promote family, to assist people, to try to address those issues. Because, like I said, abortion numbers have gone up. Another issue that we face right now is the proliferation of the abortion pill. And so before Roe, the abortion pill was available, but then you go through COVID and it ticked up a whole lot with the abortion pill. And now at least about 60%, bordering on 70% of abortions are not happening in a clinic. They're not happening, in the old school way that you would think about. They're happening in the privacy of women and men's homes because they're getting abortion pills, even in states where abortion is illegal, up to 6 weeks, those sorts of things. And so we're fighting kind of a silent killer now because you can get abortion help through the mail. Just here, the story of Amber Thurman here in Georgia. She goes to North Carolina, gets abortion pills there. She has to come back here. The pills don't completely get rid of the child, and so she's suffering from an infection. She ends up dying. That becomes a political football. Vice President Harris comes here. All these things happening. But my point is, this is what we're facing, and so I think for the pro-life movement, we have to understand that we still got to talk about this in our churches. We still got to talk about it in our family circles. Men, we have to challenge other men. I truly believe that abortion ends when men make it so. That's nothing to take away from women. But what that's saying is that when we do what we're supposed to do, we don't have to deal with that. And quite honestly, there are a lot of men who want abortion to stay legal for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a big battle to still fight. And I think that the pro-life movement, for the most part, realizes that. There was a bit of apathy. There was a bit of feeling defeated because, as you mentioned, all the referendum, we lost like, I don't know, 7 straight ballot initiatives at some point. Maybe it was 8. And so there was some disappointment there. But I do think that this next phase has to be a holistic approach where we show people that we care about women and children. We have to be able to change the narrative, because now the narrative is that pro-lifers hate women, and people hear that and they believe it, even if it isn't true. We have to find ways to change that narrative.
Yeah. And we have, many people in the country who know it's not true and continue to parrot that. There's hate women and they know it's untrue. Even in the case of Uma, who was killed. I mean, she was killed by abortion. I mean, people just not being real about that. It's sad. And how do you measure, like, being in this movement and it's going to be a long battle. How do you measure success? Do you go by the number of, just the raw number of lives saved? Do you go by, amount of legislation, pro-life legislation that's being passed? How do you measure success and kind of, keep yourself going and believing in ultimate victory?
Yeah. How do you measure success? That's difficult because our goal is to make abortion unthinkable and unnecessary. The unnecessary piece points to that 76%. The unthinkable piece points to a culture change where we believe that life is valuable in the preborn stage, so that it's unthinkable to do that to a child. And that's kind of one of those big picture visions that's, is out there, but hey, Roe was out there too. It can happen for sure.
Yeah.
I think we measure success by client stories, by stories of women who have been impacted, at least, in the seat where I sit with Human Coalition, the client stories of women who came into our call center through telecare and whose needs were met and who decided to make a decision for life. We measure success through your local pregnancy resource centers. When I visited those centers before, and a woman and a man perhaps come in with a child that was born because somebody in that pregnancy resource center gave them some diapers and gave them some formula if they needed that, and walked beside them and gave them counseling and just talked to them and listened to them. That's how we measure success. We do measure success at the ballot box as well, but that in and of itself is not enough. And the thing that I continue to say is that even if we were winning at the ballot box, even if we were so-called banning abortion, do women still feel a need and still feel like this is the right decision and a necessary decision? And if the answer is no, yes, we need legislation, but yes, we also need to address the totality of somebody's life. It's when those two things come together that we have that success.
Absolutely. And as I kind of close here, I think we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, maybe max of 2. I'll just say that, so you can prepare those questions if you have them. But my final question, I want to talk about the next generation. How are we teaching? Both of us are dads. I only have 2 kids. You have 7, so I'm like not even close. But
it ain't a race, bro. It ain't a race.
Anyway, so I think about how we teach this to the next generation, how we give them, how we share a passion for justice, and so even if they don't necessarily become pro-life activists, just having a passion for justice and caring about things outside themselves. I want to hear kind of your thoughts on that. One of my kind of favorite stories about Bishop Dean that really was a huge influence on me, which is an interesting story, was he didn't just talk about justice in terms of, kind of these national issues and everything else. He was obviously a very outspoken activist. But just in day to day, he would not tolerate injustice just in day to day. And one time, maybe it might have been 10 years ago, he came by the house and him and Joy were there, and his wrist was wrapped up. And I did not, it was kind of like, oh, what happened to your wrist? And he said, oh, I was in a physical altercation. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And I want to be clear, this is like totally outside the door. I mean, Bishop Dean was never a violent person at all. And it turns out he was on this subway in DC, in the metro in DC, and these three boys, this kind of group of boys, were just kind of stirring up, just being really obnoxious, kind of mess around with people, saying stuff, kind of walking around, just being kind of just a nuisance. And there was this older woman who happened to be actually older Black woman who was there with her granddaughter who had just come from church. And she had like a little church hat on, the old moms do. And these three boys are like, start just trying to tease this woman. And they're getting in her face. And they even at one point, they pop off, they hit her hat off, like her church hat off in the metro. Bishop Dean sees this and he gets up and physically takes the boy and pushes him up against the window and said, you need to calm down. You are not going to be over here disrespecting people. I mean, it's an insane story. I mean, so of course, people, the other two boys come and get him off, and thankfully they at least acknowledge that that what their friend was doing was wrong, and it kind of stopped there. Very risky. To this day, I'm not sure Julia is very happy with, with how that all went down. Although I did ask for her permission to share that story. But to me, I love that story because it was like, it's not just talk for him. It's not just about going on the news and talking about justice and that. It's like, he's not going to tolerate it anywhere. And I feel like you are another man in that same mold where you don't tolerate it. And so for us dads, how do we teach that to our kids?
Man, that's a great story, by the way. Like, I can't imagine Dean getting in a fight, but I can't imagine him doing it for the right reason. So I can't imagine him flipping some tables if he had to. I think, our kids, for those of you who have young kids or maybe young grandkids, like, we can't lie to them. We can lie to a lot of people, but we can't lie to them. We can lie on cable TV. We can lie at work. We can lie with our friends, but we can't lie to them because they see us every single day. They know if we're full of it or not. And so it's showing them that we are not just being hearers of the word, but we're being doers. Specifically when it comes to issues of justice, it's, whatever that is in your own realm. For us, it's been, we've been involved with the organization called International Justice Mission, and they combat human trafficking. And for us, it's just been supporting them, but also going to the field to see some of the work that they do, telling our kids about what we're doing so that they understand and they know. Even at Human Coalition, I brought my daughter, who's walking by right now in the hallway. I've brought her to some of our meetings to let her hear about what's going on there and that sort of thing. It's exposing them to what it means to stand for justice and to stand for life just in general. It's teaching them that God has a heart for justice, and that this word justice, it gets thrown around a lot. Everybody's got a different justice. The tree huggers got a justice, like everybody got a justice. But as believers, what does that mean when it says God is a God of justice and loving kindness in Jeremiah? When it says that God is a God of justice in Isaiah, when it talks about just the idea of justice in Genesis, of bringing creation back to right relationship with each other and with God. That's what justice is. Justice is about bringing creation as much as we can this side of heaven back into right relationship, horizontally and vertically, and correcting where injustice happens. And so when we understand that God always speaks on behalf of the vulnerable, that he speaks on behalf of the downtrodden, that this isn't something that we're just making up, and it's not just political, but that this is something that as a believer, we should have a heart like God does for the same things that he cares about. Then they see that from us, and hopefully they get that from us, but not only do they hear us, they see how we walk. And on a day-to-day basis, you mentioned, Dean, in that subway, on a day-to-day basis, there are plenty of times where we have opportunities to do justice, to give mercy, to show kindness. There are also plenty of times where we have an opportunity to apologize to our kids because we didn't show kindness or show mercy or do justice. And so the next generation, We can't give our kids what we don't have. And so it's imperative that we, on this issue, specifically when we talk about life, but on justice issues in general, show them, encourage them, teach them, so that they too, when it's time for them, will understand the importance of life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Benjamin. I think we only got 5 minutes left. I think we'll go down to maybe one question from the audience, and we're gonna have to wrap this up. I don't want to keep people too late. But if you have one question, Tori, do you want to manage that? If someone is raising their hand or wants to put something in the chat, I'm happy to answer. But we can bring it to Benjamin. All right, that's it. I'm moving. Well, thank you so much. I'm not going to. Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's an honor. I appreciate just it's great as someone who's, I guess you got me by about maybe 10 or 12 years. It's just great to have someone I can look up to who's walking it out, talking it out, and is living life for the glory of God, and is doing that even in the public sphere. It really does mean a lot, and I just think I speak for everyone when I say thank you for being here, and we appreciate you.
Yes, sir, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, Tori, you can take it from there.
Awesome. Well, what a great call. Thank you guys so much for a wonderful discussion. Thank you all for joining us. Surprisingly shy groups. I'm sorry, Benjamin. Normally the group's a little more chatty and we normally get a handful of questions, but that's okay. Maybe we'll chalk it up to the weather and everyone's worried about the storm or something. But seriously, we do appreciate you all being part of our conversations. We try to have these every single month, and we try to bring great leaders, and we're excited. The big one you're going to want to keep on your radar: Bishop Garland Hunt will be giving a year-long update in our December call. That's going to be the big one. We're still discussing what November is going to look like, because we're hoping that all of you will make plans to join us in Atlanta for our 2024 regional conference. And Mariko, if you don't mind popping up our graphic there with the QR code. This conference, for anyone that has been following DLI, this is like much of our work at DLI goes towards this conference. And we have been working tirelessly to bring the highest quality guests. The presentation, everybody that has come to this conference has been extremely excited to be a part of it. If you would like to be part of that whole opportunity to connect with folks, to hear from leaders, to be enriched, conference.dlinstitute.org. That is the website that you can go to get more information on that. You can register, sign up. We've got all sorts of information about our speakers, and anything that you can think of that you need related to that. If you're part of our email newsletter, if you go to dlinstitute.org, you will be able to find a link to sign up for our newsletter. We send lots of updates. We've got an exciting message from Bishop Hunt ready to go out to get you all just a real in-depth analysis about what we're going to be presenting at this conference. So those are just a few things. And then also I want to draw your attention to the opportunity to financially support the Douglass Leadership Institute: www.dlinstitute.org/donate. That's another opportunity that you can have to financially support the mission. It basically is, we invest it in equipping and empowering folks in order to continue our mission of advancing our core issues, strengthening the Black family unit, supporting economic opportunity for all, criminal justice reform in the context of the law, and many other issues, the pro-life issue, Jeremiah 1:5, the Forward Justice Initiative. There are just so many things that we are working on for all of those things. So those are just a few of the things that we would encourage you to stay connected with us on. Like I said before, the biggest thing is the conference. It's coming up October the 24th to 26th. If you have not already, go check out the website, book your plane tickets. If you're traveling, if you're local, block that time on your schedule, be a part of the discussion. We at the staff are going to do everything that we can to be excellent hosts and to make it entirely worth your while. So thank you all so much for your time. We do plan to do a rebroadcast of this call. So if you have anyone that missed the call and wants to catch the discussion, we'll be publishing this on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and type Douglass Leadership Institute, you can catch many of our past calls, as well as the replay for this. I'm going to go ahead and close this in prayer, and we'll call it an evening right on time. Let's all pray. Father, thank you so much for this day, your grace, your mercy. Thank you so much for the opportunity we have to hear the testimony of Benjamin Watson, and just the work that he and the Human Coalition are doing to spread the message of life and to reinforce our commitment to the life that you declared is sacred. Thank you so much for Jeremy and his facilitating of the conversation, for Bishop Hunt and all the work that's going into the conference. I ask that you would just impress on each and every person's heart, give them the ability, the passion, the power to do whatever they can to be part of this impacting our culture for Christ. And if it's your will, Lord, we'd love to see many of these individuals in Atlanta for our conference. And we ask that you would clear away any obstacles, if there's anything that can be done that would allow as many folks as possible to benefit from the resources that you have allowed us to gather. We ask that you would make that possible. We ask all these things in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.